Now, some of us Warhammer fans have been putting aside our miniature painting brushes, if only for a little bit, in order to partake in what is for some of us a brand new hobby, Gundam. And around a year ago, when I made my first video about venturing into the bizarre world of Gunpla as a Warhammer fan, I came to the conclusion that whilst it does have some similarities to my homeboy and one true love Warhammer, it did feel different enough that I could never imagine the two ever competing for my attention in a significant way. And I'm happy now to have two very different hobbies, which, wait a minute, what? What is this? What do you, no, oh my god, no. So like, yeah, I guess forget everything I just said, because Gundam now has a Warhammer scale miniature game, and I've never wanted to paint anything more in my entire life. They got me. Good job, Bandai. Well played. For those who are out of the general Gundam loop, this is Gundam Assemble, Bandai's brand new hex-based miniature war game, which features familiar-looking grey plastic miniatures ready for painting in all of our favourite mobile suits from the Gundam series. And I'm here today because, of course, I managed to get my hands on some of the miniatures. Yay! So in this video, I'm going to show you everything you want to know about these brand new minis, from a full unboxing and build session, a first impressions reaction to the miniatures themselves, and then obviously, we're going to paint one up. Obviously. But we're not just going to be slapping some paint on the miniature and calling it done just for the sake of it. No. Instead, I'll be combining both my extensive Warhammer experience and a couple of brand new techniques I've picked up from the Gundam hobby too, in order to push not only this miniature, but also myself, my painting skills, and my comfort zone further than they've ever been pushed before. And hopefully, by finally unifying these two hobbies with their very different skill sets and styles, I'll in theory be able to make this miniature one of the best I have ever painted. Whoosh. Let's go. So before we get started on our tiny Gundam adventure that I am so hyped for, I first want to mention something very exciting which happened to the channel, which you may have noticed already, and that is that whilst I was editing my last video, the channel officially hit over 200,000 subscribers. Wow. I really don't know what to say. Like, I didn't know what to say the first time this happened, and now the number is even bigger, so I'll try and keep it brief and just say thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for commenting, liking, subscribing, or even occasionally turning up to watch a video. I really appreciate it, because turns out I really like doing this whole YouTube thing, and it's wonderful that you guys seem to enjoy doing it alongside with me. So yes, thank you so much, and let's get back to the video. Thanks. As I mentioned in the intro, these minis are part of the new Gundam Assemble game, and if you're excited to grab the full range and start playing the game, well, you'll have to wait, because the game itself isn't launching until I think early 2026. I think. Don't quote me on that, but it is later. But if, like me, you are just itching to get your hands on the miniatures themselves, then you can get some of the Gundam Assemble minis a little bit earlier, as some of them are included in these also brand new Gundam card game boxes. And since I was very impatient to get my hands on these miniatures as soon as I could, and because I have been a little Gundam the card game curious, I pre-ordered some of the boxes, and they have arrived, and that is what I have here today. Yay. And I'm really glad that I did pre-order them, because apparently they have been very popular and are pretty sold out in a lot of places. Either way, let's dive right in and take a first look at what's inside these boxes. In each box, you get a paper playmat, some instructions, a very thick and generous deck of cards and tokens, and of course, your 3 on the sprue Gundam Assemble miniatures. And I paid £35 for each of the boxes, so £70 for both my two boxes combined, which for 6 miniatures, I think £70 would be quite expensive. But fortunately, because I'm also looking to get into the card game, and you do get, I cannot stress this enough, a lot of very nice cards in this box as well as the minis, I do feel like these boxes are quite good value for money. And I don't want to spend too long talking about the cards themselves, because that's not why we're here today, but I really do think that they are so nice, and they deserve a a little bit of a spotlight too. So here's a quick look at them anyways, just in case you are also a little bit Gundam card curious. But yeah, back to the minis. Each of the boxes comes with 3 miniatures that go alongside the main themes and mobile suits of each card deck. The boxes I chose were the Heroic Beginnings one, which includes the iconic RX-78-2, the gun cannon and the gun tank, and Zeon's Rush, obviously because it's got a bunch of base Zakus in it, including Char's custom Zaku, which is my favorite because it's pink. So let's finally have a look at how these Gundams assemble. I think with these miniatures, the big question on everyone's lips is, how do they compare to Warhammer miniatures? And as with anything, there are some big pluses and some small minuses when you're comparing the two to each other. Let's start with some of the positives. And yes, a huge one here is that just like the larger Gundam kits, these guys go together like an absolute dream using entirely push-fit technology and zero glue. Given they're around the same scale as a Warhammer miniature, they do absolutely put the Games Workshop push-fit technology to shame. The minis go together so easily with no more than around 5 to 7 pieces per model, and there are no gaps to fill and no fingers breaking trying to squeeze together a torso or plug a leg into a body. On top of that, similarly to the mainline Bandai plastic kits, the mold line issue is basically non-existent. Now, I'm not saying that there are no mold lines at all on these minis, there are still a few, but they're either very small in comparison to Warhammer, or so well hidden within the details themselves that you can't see them, and there's very little cleanup required after you've assembled them, which again is a big plus in my books. The details as well on the miniatures themselves are really nice too. They are sharp and fine and not at all soft, as you can see demonstrated here on this nicely sculpted and detailed half of Grandpa's tiny little face. The minis are simple, but they still have enough detail to make them look intricate and representative of the source material and their larger counterparts too. But as an obsessive miniature painter, I do kind of wish there were just a few more panels and rivets here and there for me to really get stuck into and paint. But again, that's just me, probably being a little bit selfish and forgetting that a lot of the time, people kind of like simpler miniatures. So editing Louise here as a quick aside, because literally today they have just revealed some pictures of some upcoming G-Quux Gundam Assemble miniatures, and yeah, they look like the most detailed miniatures I've ever seen, and I can't wait to paint them. But yes, it looks like in the future we have some more detailed Gundam Assemble miniatures to look forward to. Yay! Back to the video. And speaking of negatives specifically from a Warhammer point of view, one thing that I know you guys will have probably picked up on already is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of scope for kit bashing on these miniatures. The parts and poses are pretty locked in on these miniatures, and the arms and the weapons all kind of fit only in the dedicated places where they're supposed to be. And obviously this will make it a lot harder to do an arm, weapon, or even a pose swap without having to buy multiple kits or using some heavy green stuff and converting skills. And if you are a little bit kit bash curious, then these miniatures stand just slightly taller than your average Primaris Space Marine, and the head is basically the exact same size too, so do with that information what you will. Make a Gundam Space Marine, do it. But once you snap these miniatures together, which like I said takes no time at all, they absolutely slap and look totally amazing. The poses are all super dynamic and iconic, the plastic quality and detail feels great, and overall, as both a miniature painter and a Gundam fan, I am seriously impressed and very happy with these guys too. But with all of them built, it's time to decide which one I'm going to paint, and obviously it's Grandpa. Come on. For those who aren't as Gundam enthused as I am, the RX-78-2 is kind of like the poster boy and the OG Gundam, and is basically the whole reason that I bought this box here. I'm sorry, Guntank, you're fine too. So let's start painting and find out what it looks like when you paint one of these Gundam miniatures like it's a Warhammer miniature. Let's go. Since I was a little bit intimidated by the sculpt, I thought I would just dive right in and start painting it up in exactly the same way I would any Warhammer miniature, by priming it up with some matte black primer, and then start by painting the head first. I thought that the head would be a good place to start because it felt like a familiar sort of shape to the ones that I'm used to painting, as in, if I really wanted to and I squinted my eyes, I could sort of trick myself into believing that I was painting a weird kind of Space Marine helmet. And I've painted loads of those before, so no biggie, right? Not intimidating at all. But to my surprise, it was actually a wee bit trickier than a typical Space Marine helmet, mostly because the scale is actually quite a bit smaller, especially the eye details. They're quite deep set inside of the helmet when it's assembled, and they are very, very tiny as well, so I had to spend some time here making them look right. As I reached the end of painting the helmet, I looked at it and yeah, it was a nice paint job, and the recesses were all deep and readable despite the size, and it was good enough overall, but something was definitely missing. It was just kind of meh, especially when I had decided that I was really going to try and push myself with this miniature. But then I had an awesome idea which would end up taking this entire project to the next level. Given that I had recently spent an entire week building the most impossibly detailed version of this suit at perfect grade scale, I thought, why not incorporate some of the details from that kit onto this miniature? And this all sounds well and good, but let's remember the Gundam Assemble miniature I'm painting here is around 1 inch tall, and the perfect grade Unleashed kit is like 10 times that size. So in order to scale down the details I want to be the size of my miniature, I'm gonna have to do some very, very tiny freehanding. Oh no, freehanding tiny details onto a miniature. I hate doing that. What a torture. What'll I do? I think that was good acting. I added in some of those extra panel lines just using some darker blackish paint, and then I highlighted them with some white to make them look extra 3D, and then I chose some of the decals and text elements from the PGU to freehand in as well. And honestly, already I think it's made such a difference to the miniature. It really took it from just a good-ish paint job to exactly what I had in mind for this whole project, which was an opportunity to push myself and also the miniature. After the head was done, I moved on to the rest of the miniature, painting it in much the same way I had the head, by gradually building up those bluish white tones and adding in some deep black recess shading to really make those details pop at a distance. But after I'd spent ages doing the arm and the gun with all of its freehanding to match the PGU and some cool effects, something still wasn't enough for me. Like, something about the white still looked off and a little bit flat, and like I just wasn't trying hard enough, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I just wasn't happy with the miniature, and that was just the worst. But then I remembered some ancient wisdom taught to me by a very talented painter, which is one of the best ways that you can highlight white is actually with weathering. Because the white on this guy's armor is so white, the sharpness of the lines can get a little bit lost in all of the highlights. So by using some very thin dark lines along the sharpest points, it highlights them whilst also making it look like some cool cartoony cel-shaded line art at the same time. Like I said, you can get a similar effect on white armor by doing some chipping or weathering along the sharper edges and corners, but since that scale of detail would be so small on this miniature that you'd never see it, and because I quite like the look of it, I am going with the line art style. Putting this line art on some of the sharper points of the white, I think not only added a lot more visual interest on this very blank white area, but also kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone and forced me to try something which looked pretty different from my usual style. Moving back onto the torso area, I was finally painting something other than white armor, so I was having a lot of fun. But more importantly, I think it was right here that something in my stupid monkey painting brain kind of started to click. A lot, if not most, of what I paint is either organic or heavily curved, like a goblin or a space marine, and this guy felt like it was neither of those things. This Gundam miniature almost felt like I was painting a bunch of shapes, if that makes sense. He's all angles and corners and very simple blocky chunks. And as I worked on his torso, I realized that painting shapes is actually pretty cool. I start to exaggerate the shadows and light way more in this area by making some bolder choices with my colors to really try and boost the contrast, and honestly, it was super fun, but I also think it made the miniature just look, I don't know, a little bit more cartoony and definitely bolder, but in a really good way. The simplistic shapey sculpt itself gave me loads of room to either go as hard or as simply and smoothly as I liked, like on the shield here. It's quite a big flat area, so I spent ages doing a big bit of blending all over it, again exaggerating all those clean lines and angles to give it this almost crystal-like shading effect. And between my new confidence in this style of painting, all the fun I was having, carrying over those free-handed details from the PGU, and also owning the world's best reference material ever, I was finding that this whole project was just an absolute blast for me to paint, which, like I said at the beginning, was something I wasn't quite expecting from such a simple sculpt. By the time I got round to the legs, I was feeling pretty confident in myself, so I decided that since I was just about rounding off the miniature, I would go super hard in this area and put everything I had learned into practice to put myself through one more skill challenging test, or skill testing challenge, one of the two. Either way, I wanted to do something very cool on the legs. I used this old Gundam box art as a reference to help me push my contrast skills and get really confident with my shadow placement on this final dominant white area. And when I tell you guys that this pair of unassuming Gundam legs have done more to rewire my brain into being a better painter than maybe the last 2 years of painting combined, I mean it. And I know that sounds fake and weird, but I promise you it's true. Just listen up, hear me out. In the last couple of years, I really feel like, unfortunately, my painting skills have kind of plateaued. And that doesn't mean I think I'm bad at painting or anything like that, but I just don't feel like, given the amount of time I spend painting, I'm making huge improvements like I used to when I first started. And that feeling kinda sucks a little bit. But as with any hobby, whether it's music, sports, video games, or even miniature painting too, I find that you occasionally face a challenge like a particularly tricky level or a complicated song that pushes you out of your allotted skill set and comfort zone, and it kind of forces your brain to work in a different way. And this miniature was definitely like that for me. Especially given the fact that I'm painting white here, I have never ever been so bold and brash with my shadow placement on a miniature ever. I thought I would be so scared and nervous to put like such a dark grey next to a white in the hopes that it doesn't look like a grey mushy mess, but I trusted the process and myself, and it ended up going so much better than I thought it would. By the time I'd put in all of my stylistic panel lines over the top of the white and added in that extra little bit of free-handed detail, the legs looked so clean and crisp, and most importantly, like I had actually understood what I was painting in a really meaningful way. But either way, with the miniature looking complete, we are not done yet, because as per usual, when it came round to basing the miniature, I ended up feeling predictably a little bit stumped. I decided I wanted to do something which would both tie in with the miniature's aesthetic, but also not distract from the paint job like I think a full scenic base would. So I popped on my tablet and I sculpted up a simple hex plinth with some smaller hexes dotted around on top of it too. Because the final Gundam Assemble miniatures are advertised as being on these hex bases and not the round bases that the miniatures come with for some reason, and also because everybody knows that hexagons are peak sci-fi. I printed out the bases in a few different heights and sizes, cleaned them up, and I picked the one that I thought suited him best. Then for the color scheme, I opted for a very dark blue, almost black gradient with some soft highlights focusing into the corner, because I thought a nice dark base would kind of help the miniature itself stand out a little bit more. And here you can see that I'm just dry brushing. There's absolutely no airbrush needed for this very smooth dark gradient that I'm making. I'm just using using my favorite cheap makeup brushes, and I'm very slowly and carefully building up my colors in gradual layers, focusing the lighter colors into the side here in a very small area until the result looks airbrushed. I personally love flexing by doing this kind of really smooth gradient stuff without an airbrush, but of course, if you have an airbrush and you're good at using it like I am not, then please use it because it's probably much easier. But now with the base all complete, it's time to finally put the whole thing together, whap out my sci-fi background book, and give this guy the reveal that he deserves. Like I said, I think it's so rare after so many years of miniature painting that something comes along which really pushes me outside of anything that I've tried before, but this guy really did that for me. And despite the fact that on paper the color scheme is pretty basic and could end up looking a bit uninspiring, I think that the deep panel lining, boosted contrast which looks almost like cell shading, and especially all of those free-handed perfect grade unleashed details has made this miniature look anything but. So yeah, please let me know in the comments section what you think of this miniature and how you think I did, and let me know if you're as excited as I am for the full release of this miniature game. Because whilst I started off this whole project assuming I would be using my Warhammer skills to make me a better Gundam painter, what I didn't expect was for this unassuming Gundam miniature to actually make me a better Warhammer painter, and I think that's pretty cool. But I'm afraid that is all we have time for today. As usual, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for being rogues. I will see you in the next one. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.